I'm sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, to the Corporation Nation radio program. It is the 12th of March, 2014, and we are, I believe we're on about our 97th or so show now, approaching the 100 mark. Woohoo! I've actually managed to not get kicked off a radio station. I find that actually hard to believe, a commercial one anyway. So I must be doing something at least halfway right. That's good. Today we're, a special guest, of course, is joining us every week, indefinitely, and I'm very, very pleased to have, Daniel. Daniel's YouTube channel is called Christian Remedy in Law. We've had 2 shows with Daniel, and we're going to continue the conversation. Today, we covered birth, the concept of birth, which is ironic because really you're born into death. You are immediately born into the world innocent and pure, and first thing that happens, of course, is that the government makes every attempt to summon you into a state of deadness, civil death, whatever you want to call it. It's ironic because, of course, you must be artificial for government to really have any control over you. You must be bonded and insured through the surname to insure ants. It's very funny, all these words that we talk about. But today, we wanted to start out by answering a question that was asked actually on the first show. And it was basically about the fact that usury is promoted, actually, in the Bible. Of course, it's promoted in some sections and abhorred in other sections. And so today I wanted to start off by making sure that people contemplate what is happening in the Bible, because basically you have a dualistic story, 2 stories going side by side. One is the legal, basically talking about God in the heavens, and one is talking about the men on earth who claim to rule in God's name, who also call themselves God. Now, you'll notice in the Bible that there are times when God is capitalized. You'll notice where sometimes the word gods is used plural and it's not capitalized, and other times you'll see the word God or Lord when it is not capitalized, which again refers not to God in the heavens, but the man who claims to be God on earth. And so with that, I want to introduce Daniel again, and let's talk about usury. What does it actually say in the Bible as far as promoting and then also being against at the same time, because of 2 different parallel stories that are going on?
Well, greetings, Clint. It's kind of hard to sometimes, I think, walk into this subject because a lot of Christians, unfortunately, maybe haven't done their due diligence to read the Bible and to see man's journey through the Bible from the Old Testament, where a man was certainly very much under the penalty of whatever happened if he violated the law, whereas the New Testament brought in grace, and grace is contrary to legal. So when you have those 2 concepts or those two ideas mixed up, merged together, you're going to have confusion. And so unfortunately right now, people are walking with a mixed up name that deals with legal and grace, but you really can't have those two things together. They don't mix. You're either walking in grace or you're walking in legal. So the world of man works with legal, and yes, it does involve usury. And when we look at things quite simply, usury or interest is charged on something that belongs to one and is being used by someone else who is a stranger to it and wants to claim or use it. So therefore, they're charged usury. Now, many times in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, there are parables in there. And the parables many times they're used in a manner. Jesus spoke in parables because he had to talk in the way that the people could comprehend what he was trying to get a point across on. And that's why the apostles at times said, why do we understand the mystery? But, you speak to these people and the masses in parables. So he was speaking to the multitudes in parables because they wouldn't have understood any other way, and he hoped later their eyes would be opened up. But you have to talk to someone where their 2 feet are first. So when I'm talking to someone about law, I'm generally talking about people that are participants. They're people that have a legal name. They're walking in a legal position. They're not walking in exemption or in grace. They're walking in legal. So when they're walking legal, they have to understand that they're using something that someone could enforce a fee, a duty, an obligation, a fine. We can call it a usage fee, a usury, an interest, for using something that is not theirs. That's why everybody in society that we know in democracies have licenses. Licenses to drive, licenses to operate certain businesses, but the businesses are attached to something that is not theirs. It's something they assume is theirs, but it doesn't mean it is theirs. Mere claim does not mean title. In other words, I can claim a title, but it doesn't mean it's mine.
It's the same thing as exaction.
Yes. So if I'm using something that is not mine, and that's why a license is permission to break the law. It's to do something that it would not be lawful, but they're giving you permission or license to do it.
It's to do something in the name of something else, basically.
Right. I don't need a license to be myself. I don't need a license to be who I was bestowed to be with a gifted name at birth, which is the name that we usually refer to as the God-given name, which cannot be conveyed to any person, corporation, or trust. Can't be given away. But we can consent to use something that isn't ours, and at that point, we will need a license to use that.
Well, that's interesting.
Therefore, they charge fees and usury for it.
Right. That's interesting because, of course, if you're going to have a person and do things in the name of that person's with license, no wonder the government requires insurance, because you're using a person, and so in order to make sure that that person is going to cover his obligations, or in other words, debt, you're going to be required by government for the use of its person to give you license. You're going to have to get insurance in order to get that privilege of usage. Insurance really must be given to a person, right? You can't really have insurance outside of this system. I mean, if you're going to have insurance, in other words, you have to have a name.
Well, there's a risk. The reason why there's a risk is because what you're using is not yours, and there's a chance that you could misuse it, get yourself into trouble with it. It's taking on something that is not assured. Your given name is assured by God.
All right, folks. Sorry to cut you off. We're going to go to a break, so we'll be back and continue this.
of all, let me take just a moment to thank you for allowing me back into your homes. If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation.
Let's build a happy little cloud. Let's build some happy little trees. There are no limits here. You start out by believing here is in your world. You're the creator. Find freedom on this canvas. Believe that you can do it. Because you can do it. Relax. Let it flow. Think like water. Relax. Let it flow. You can go on and on and on.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're in the Corporation Nation, and we're truly breaking down that concept today. Now, it's funny, Daniel, you talked about the word grace. And you'd expect, of course, when you look in a dictionary, I'm looking in my Webster's 1828 dictionary, and which was a gift, and I thank the giver once more. It's been very handy. But I'm looking at the word grace, and it's got over 20 definitions, because you see, we're talking about the noun again, so the name basically. So we're looking at many, many, many different versions of the word grace and how it's manipulated into something else. Let me give you some examples. Number one says favor, goodwill, kindness, disposition to oblige another as a grant made as an act of grace. Appropriately, the free, unmerited love and favor of God, the spring and source of all the benefits men receive from Him. Now, it's interesting because Him is not capitalized, which tells me it's not referring to necessarily to it can refer to both God and the God of earth, the kings, and all of that. And when you go down, you see other definitions. One definition is privilege, simply privilege, or favor conferred. One is eternal life and final salvation. So there's these different versions. What really caught my eye was grace was actually beauty defied, among pagans a goddess. The graces were 3 in number: Aglia, Thalia, and Euphrosyne, excuse my pronunciation, the constant attendants of Venus. There's also a reference to Jupiter. So it goes on and on and on. In the end, it says, it explains very much what the differences are. Here's days of grace. So if you have we've all heard of the grace period. We get a grace period if we're late on our debt. That means we're not standing in good faith, basically. So, in government anyway. So a day of grace in theology, meaning in the church, the doctrine, is, quote, a time of probation when an offer is made to sinners. Okay, well, sin, we found out, is from S-Y-N-N, which refers to sin against government. All right, so in theology, you're literally, that is, the man who claims to be God and the executor is giving you a probation so that you don't go to hell, which is the prison below his chambers. And then it says days of grace in commerce. So now we're entering into the secular. It says the days immediately following the day when a bill or note becomes due, which days are allowed to the debtor or payer to make payment. In Great Britain and the United States, the days of grace are 3. But in other countries, more, the usages of merchants being different. Now, we're all very familiar with the 3-day grace period. That's common within government payments and other types of payments. So this word is chock full of hidden meanings. It's pretty incredible. Do we have you, Daniel?
Yeah, we do. I wasn't sure if you were finished. I didn't want to interrupt. People, if they can get their head around this for a moment, a grace is not a right. So in man's world, grace is a little different than grace with God.
Yeah.
Grace with God is a gift. It's His property. He basically has pardoned individuals on the spiritual level, we're basically brought back to be sons of God, children of the highest power, the highest sovereignty. Now, in man's world, he's got a little flip version of this, because man's world goes from fact, which is truth with God, to something that's contrary, which is legal, which is factitious or fiction, and so their grace idea is a license. So they say, we will sell you indulgences, you can break the law, as long as you're willing to pay the fee for it. So what really is happening is all the things you could possibly ever do wrong has been computed up ahead of time for a value, different than invaluable, because our life is priceless. But in the world of fiction, you have a value. And therefore, it's an insurable risk. And therefore, there's a calculation done on what you possibly could damage out there.
What's amazing
but
about
you're
that?
giving your consent ahead of time to say, I want to be the surety, the guarantor, for the use of that property, that fictitious property, for a fee. And therefore, the license is to break the law because you're using property that is not yours for a predisposed or a predetermined price ahead of time. So when I go down, if I go down the road and I'm speeding and I get a ticket in the world of man's trafficking on the road in commerce, I'm saying that I will basically pay for the right to speed. So when I get the ticket, I'm already guilty because I'm the guy who says, give me the bill, because I've taken on the property of another and I'm acting as surety for it.
Well, what's amazing is if you think about that for a while, suddenly it makes a lot of sense. You know, we've talked about the private prison industry. We've talked about how all prisoners or people who are found guilty in a court are actually, whether they go to jail or not, probation is basically jail at home. They're assigned a QSIP number. QSIP number is actually what all securities on the stock market get. So what government is really doing is trading not people, not actual men, but they're trading the actual, as a security, all the prisoners. They're trading the, if you will, the profits that will be made in the future, the time currency, if you will, of that particular name. So while the man, the natural being, is in jail and doing cheap labor or free labor, the name itself, the corporation, the person, is actually being put up on the stock market as a bundled security, just like a mortgage would be, and being traded over and over into hypothecation and all that. That actually makes it make a lot more sense, because you're not trading men, you're trading persons. What a huge difference that is. They're trading their own property and making a profit, basically. And and I guess that also makes sense when we're talking about soldiers, the people who accept payment to be a mercenary in the U.S. Air Force, Army, Marines, and whatever. They are insured because, of course, the person is the one that is registering as a soldier, taking the oath, and so the insurance is put on the surname. And, of course, when that soldier is shot and killed or bombed and blown into little pieces, government collects on the insurance. What a racket.
Especially when the ones that are controlling it, of course, are basically on a side that doesn't have really anything other than an evil intent, but they can only control those that consent to do what is evil.
Yeah, all right,
Uniquely,
Daniel,
we were looking up the word nickname.
We gotta take a break. Remember nickname. We'll be back, folks.
You want some more?
He's a rebel and a runner. He's a signal turning green. He's a restless young romantic, wants to run a big machine. He's got a problem with his poisons, but you know
Welcome back. You're in the Corporation Nation, and guest today, Daniel from Christian Remedy in Law. That's YouTube, actually, Christian Remedy in Law. And I want to remind people here, we are not here to preach to you. We're not here to convert you. We're not here to do anything except to expose the, well, I won't say simple, the craziness, the babble, the dualistic language of the Bible so that you can read the thing and actually grasp what the heck's going on there. It's been very, very, very helpful and enlightening to myself to have Daniel and other folks on here explaining all these things, and I hope that it's having the same effect on the audience. Apparently it is, because I've gotten nothing but very, very positive responses. People are very happy to have you here, Daniel, and so I appreciate you joining me each week. What is this nickname stuff that you were talking about?
Well, when we were looking up the research on it, there's so many words that will come close to the word surname. Agnomen is another surname. By chance, you'll find that the short form for the Attorney General's office is the AG, because it's the AG nomen office to look after all those who have agnomens or surnames.
Yeah.
You're prosecuted for your surname. The surname nickname comes from Nick, which Nick means the evil one.
Is that N-I-C or N-I-C-K or?
It's N-I-C-K. Just like a nickname. It's something disparaging. It's not something that we want to think is praising us. It's actually demeaning you.
Yeah, in and of itself, it's kind of mocking you, not recognize you as an entity, but as an action, really.
Yeah, it actually is like a blasphemy, because in law they will say that the surname is over and above the Christian name. And when you think about that, how could something made up, something that's a fiction, be over and above the Christian name? How could anything that man makes be over and above that? But unfortunately, when people do not have their beliefs in check or in order, they unfortunately run into confusion. And so therefore they would think that their family name is a good name. But the Bible does clearly state that a good name is better than gold. But if they've been made to believe that something that is fictitious is good, something that is a lie is good, well, then they've deceived themselves. So, unfortunately, the Galatians chapter 6, verse 3 comes to mind, which is, if a man thinketh he is something, when he is no thing, he deceiveth his mind. So what people have become is a thing.
Yeah.
Almost like in the Addams Family, the hand, which was called the thing.
Well, they can't become a thing, but they can believe that they have subsumed the person. They've become the artificial thing. Yeah, I could see.
That's right. Because that's what happens to the individual when they basically go down the direction of joining into a membership or an aggregate. They have to give up who they are in order to become part of a common aggregate. So therefore, the word does become subsumed in. That's used in Black's Law under the definition for all. So when we join into that membership, you cannot tell this thing that you have become part of that you basically are going to go your own way. You basically have obligated yourself to the rules, the regulations, and all the legal requirements that go with that.
Including usury, exaction, extortion, and everything else.
That's right. So if someone is a user of something, then they would pay a fee for it if it's not theirs. You don't pay a fee for something that's yours.
So then technically we're all we're all involved in usury. We're all part of the fraud that we all complain about because we are the users. And we're just paying a fee to be users, therefore we are in usury.
That's right.
That makes sense.
And it's based on consent. No, everybody has volunteered into this.
Right.
It requires voluntary consent.
Of course, you look at the maxims of law, which again are based on scriptures, and as long as you're volunteering and consenting to the situation, then there is no crime. There's nothing being broken. You're in a either verbal or a contractual obligation, basically. So you can't complain about the fraud if you know you're part of the fraud. You can't really say, well, that's fraud because you're still using the fraud. It's actually pretty enlightening. I looked up the word nick because I always like to verify things and further clarify. Nick is a noun or a name, and it says in the northern mythology, an evil spirit of the waters, hence the modern vulgar phrase, the evil one or old Nick. It's funny we say old Saint Nick, too. I wonder what that involves. It also says nickname.
It's pretty close to the same thing because they've paganized an idea of the birth of Christ into the worship of Nimrod, Nim being a robber, a pilferer. He was a hunter of men. Rod being like a correction. That's why everybody's living in the state of corrections when they use the Nimrod name. You're able at birth, but then unfortunately you bring out Cain and then you become disabled. Based on your own consent to take on the warlike name.
So we have the Department of Corrections.
That's right. I mean, people are living in a state of correction because they keep on using the incorrect name.
Man, this is getting nuts. When you break this down, I got to tell you, man, this is great. Nickname is I don't know what that word is. It's a term of contempt, like you said. It's to banter. Signifies the surname, to call by a name of reproach. Oh my God, there it is right in the dictionary. Your surname is a name of reproach, a name given in contempt or derision or reproach, an opprobrious appellation, to give a name of reproach, to call by an opprobrious appellation. That's fantastic. Wow.
And that's why the judge will have the jurisdiction in a court, because it is his jurisdiction in there. That's his house of ill repute for those that are reproaching their true position, talking in fiction. And so when the judge says contempt of court, it's really just another term for an absconding debtor who will not cooperate in there. So he'll take him away for not paying his fee. People have even got used to the word fine. You should be feeling well, not fine. If you're feeling fine, then you're not getting the message here. And you'll feel fine in that court because they'll get you out the back door paying the refine for thinking that you're refined. Just like smart is not intelligent. It's injury.
Yes.
You go into the court and you say the wrong name, the fictitious name. Well, that's basically perjury. And then you will go in jury, be tried by a jury of your own lying peers who also use fictitious names. And then basically you're going to pay the penalty.
And all of it is, none of this is actually in the de jure. That's what's also interesting. It's all de facto. It's all fraud. There's another word, knicker. One who, so government is basically a bunch of knickers. N-I-C-K-E-R, another noun. Government's a bunch of knickers. One who watches for opportunities to pilfer or practice knavery. So this describes every cop out there. One who watches for opportunities to pilfer. Hello, police. Hello, bankers. Hello, attorneys. Hello, all of you people who charge a fee to force us into a service we don't want at the barrel of a gun. You're all knickers.
And remember, too, that the word attorney is to attorn. It's to change lords, to change who your real God is to the wrong one. And so it's got to do with Baal, it's got to do with Babylon, it's got to do with false worship, being an idiot who needs ID.
To become a circuit in the machine. Welcome, folks, to the machine. We'll be back.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about.
All right, folks, welcome back. Here in the Corporation Nation. Daniel, I got to tell you, you're blowing my mind again. You are making all of my circuits and nodes, they're all reconnecting in different ways, and I really appreciate you being here and explaining all this. I'd like to think that you're helping a lot of people out there. I have no idea how many people are listening right now or who are going to get the archives. I would hope people would pass this series on because it's just been so breathtakingly eye-opening. Really.
Well, I want to thank the audience because there are some really good responses have come in with kind comments, thanking us for the research. And that's all we're trying to do. All I'm saying is it's what I found. Again, I believe fervently in truth, and I know that people are searching for truth, but they have to do their due diligence, and we're asking people, just don't listen and have it spoon-fed. It's nice when it's accurate and given to you immediately, but take the time, do the due diligence, because if we're erring in some way, we want to know. And we're open to people saying, maybe you've erred in this because we found this meant this. But so far we haven't had emails come back like that because we've taken a lot of time before we go out there and say the truth. Be concerned if you're saying something that is fictitious, because then you'll be liable. That's why you need liability. We need third-party liability to lie, not to tell the truth. And so therefore, that's the beginning of it. So we just recommend everybody out there. We're not giving advice because we're telling you the truth. Advice is to add vice. A vice. A vice is not a good thing. I'm not giving anybody advice. Those words we've been, unfortunately, so deceived on, but I don't know if we've been deceived based on the fact that we didn't have an opportunity to know what the words were because the dictionaries were there. We could have broken down these words. All a lawyer is doing is adding more fee and fine.
Actually, he's giving advice.
Your own vice.
He's giving advice. That's why we always have to say we are not giving legal advice. You could go to an attorney for advice. Yeah, exactly. Hey, let me ask you another question. Now, you're using the word we. You're up in Canada. You're in the Ontario area, although I'm sure you don't claim to be in such legal fictions. But for geographical area, you're in the Ontario region of Canada. Who is we? How are you currently living? If you don't mind me getting a little more personal, how are you currently living? Are you trying to get away from the currencies? Are you what is we and what is your lifestyle like after living all this?
I'll go back about 8 years ago. 8 years ago, when I decided that I had to do something that had, I believe, a spiritual meaning, giving without intent to receive back anything other than a good feeling, unconditional giving. And so I went out on the search to understand how this system we live in works. And I said to my wife, because this is a very, very difficult thing if you're if you're with another individual in a relationship and they're not on the same page with you, you could be in a problem. And my wife has been 100% supportive, and it's been quite a roller coaster ride when you don't know where your next situation of survival will come from in a world of secular, because you're not doing secular anymore. So you're doing something that's spiritual, and you're really, I believe, in your Creator's hands. So I basically went out saying, I'm not going to charge anybody. I'm going to go out and find out what's happening out in that world. People that were getting into trouble. Unfortunately, things happen to people in the law. That's why lawyers have quite the business. And I just went and helped them, and I researched what their problems were. And as I was helping them, I found out I was helping myself, because I learned an immense amount of knowledge to guide me on a journey that I believe is now completely spiritual. So I never charged anybody. It made me feel very uncomfortable. Got close a couple times. Asked for forgiveness for even going anywhere near the idea of receiving something in exchange for my help. And I found that I was protected. So I've literally lived the last, I'd say, 7 to 8 years on the grace of God. And people that I was around, I found were taken back by it, that they refused not to provide some form of a gift, even though they knew I wasn't charging for anything. So there was never a fee to go out there and say, okay, I'm going to help you today with this problem. Here's the cost. I wouldn't have cost them with any cost. And I knew that it was against my conscience to go down a legal position when I'm believing in the idea of grace or pardon. So I spent the time down that, and it's fed me. That's all I can say. I've been fed by my brothers that up here in Canada. I've had some really good close brothers here. I have Mladen, I have Constantine, I have Rod. These are just a few brothers that I associate with, and at times you have to realize that you have to walk this. And you have to set the example. And the biggest problem is everybody's in the aggregate doing the wrong thing, expecting changes.
Yeah.
And that world is not going to fix itself. So I knew it was best to do the opposite. So if everybody's charging, I won't be.
Well, I'll tell you what. I completely empathize with you. I've never been able to explain my actual similar disposition like that. Now maybe I can. I've never had the vocabulary, but I've had people email me and ask me, why the heck am I not charging for things? How can they donate? And I say, I don't really do donations. I mean, I'll take them if you're really in a giving mood, but I'm not doing this because I want to make money. I'm doing this because we're all doomed, basically. And we read the definition of doom at one point, and it has to do with government as well.
Yeah.
The judge passes doom upon you and puts you in hell. So I'm not doing this for money either. Now, and I've had similar experiences where just, the friends have supported me. Donations have come in just when I've needed them without asking. I mean, it's been a wonderful, journey. And it's all, I tell people, I've had people ask me, well, how did you get successful? And I'm like, I'm not successful. I say, you don't measure success. You're thinking money, you're thinking status, you're thinking all of these things. Like, I'm not successful in that way, because I don't measure my success in any way, but how many hearts and minds I'm touching. And if that's the case, that I am a bit successful, not as successful as I'd like to be, and hopefully we can do this together, man, and change some hearts and minds. We are coming to the end of our first hour here, which has been mind-blowing as usual. Daniel will be with us every Wednesday. Thank God for that. And, of course, we'll have Bert, Freeman Bert, on Thursdays, which is interesting because it's a dichotomy. We're going between, the the natural state, the natural law, and then we're going in with Bert and we're discussing the legal realm and how to navigate and understand what's happening there. A lot of people have said to me that they're now starting to question Bert, but remember that Bert is Bert's not talking about what we're talking about today. Bert is talking about the legal realm, because a lot of people out there are in deep. They are in hell, and that's who he's trying to help. So, but Bert himself, in his belief system and his understanding, although not as much as you, my friend, is where we're talking about today. He is coming out of that and helping people to navigate the legal system by doing massive study in that system. So we have sort of like I said, a dichotomy going here. So I don't want people to be confused from one day to the next because we have different subject matter. One natural, one artificial. So I hope that makes sense. We'll be back, folks, with more Daniel.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Choose the power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Welcome back, folks, to the Corporation Nation radio program. Christian Remedy and Law. My guest today is Daniel. He'll be here every Wednesday. Of course, I'm here all week. So, Daniel, I wanted to switch gears here. And thank you, by the way, for that more personal note that we just got on. But I wanted to switch gear because last week we talked about birth. We talked about being born into nature naked. You also die naked. So anything you acquire in this temporal realm here, this life, of course, doesn't go with you when you die, wherever that is. That's, of course, a personal journey we are not here to discuss. But the point is that, again, as soon as you're born, you are summoned into death. You're summoned into an artificial creation, an artificial person, against all the teachings of the Bible. Now, what I wanted to talk to you now is, okay, you've been born. We discussed the birth certificate. We've talked about all of that stuff. Now you're a child. A child, of course, is a legal term. It represents a ward of the state. It's not a natural term. It's a noun. It's the name of a person who is under the age of consent. All right? That's again, this is what good government thinks. Before we do this, I wanted to just read a couple of things. Now, we've talked about the question that I posed in one of my blog articles called, Do You Own Your Children? Well, let's go back and revisit this, and then I want Daniel to discuss this, talk about these doctrines and things that the state actually believes, because, of course, the state believes it's God. Marriage, according to Appellate Court of Illinois, number 5-97-108, marriage is a civil contract to which there are three parties, the husband, the wife, and the state. Continuing, in another case, when two people decide to get married, they're required to first procure a license from the state. As if marriage is somehow illegal without a license. If they have children of this marriage, they are required by the state to submit their children to certain things, such as school attendance and vaccinations. Again, opinion of the court. Furthermore, if at some time in the future the couple decides marriage is not working, they must petition the state for a divorce and get a license to divorce. Marriage is a three-party contract between the man, the woman, and the state. Going on to another case, Linneman versus Linneman. The state represents the public interest in the institution of marriage. Now we're talking about birth. All right? Continuing, this public interest is what allows the state to intervene in certain situations to protect the interests of members of the family. Now, when we're talking about interests, we're not talking about the interests of the family. We're talking about the interests of the state into their little investment called the child. The state is like a silent partner in the family who is not active in the everyday running of the family, but becomes active and exercises its power and authority only when necessary to protect some important interest of family life. Taking all of this into consideration, the question no longer, according to the court, is whether the state has an interest in place or place in dispute, such as the one at bar, but it becomes a question of timing and necessity. Oh, invoking the law of necessity, which really is that necessity knows no law. Goes on to state the state has a wide range of power for limiting parental freedom and authority in the things affecting the child's welfare. And here it is, folks. In fact, the entire familial relationship involves the state. Oh, let's go on to some more. Meadows versus Meadows in the Court of Civil Appeals of Alabama. The primary control and custody of infants is with the government. Oh, there's a wider area for the exercise of judicial discretion than that of providing for and protecting the best interests of children. All of these are legal terms. They're protecting their investment, their interest in the corporate person. The court stands in the position of parens patria, and I'm not sure if that's a Latin term that I don't know if I'm saying right, but it goes on to say, we held that the best interest of the child took precedent over the parent's right to travel. And, let's see, parens patria, according to the court, literally it means the parent of the country. Refers traditionally to the role of the state as sovereign and guardian of persons under legal disability. All of these are legal terms for the artificial person that we call a child or children. Pursuant to the parens patria doctrine, the primary control and custody of infants is with the government, to be delegated, as of course, to their natural guardians and protectors, which is the the people, the husband and wife, which are again legal terms. So long as the guardians are suitable persons to exercise such benevolent privilege that the state offers to parents to actually raise their own children. All right? Okay, it goes on. It doesn't end there. In other words, the state is the father and mother of the child, and the natural parents are not entitled to custody except upon the state's beneficent recognition that natural parents presumably will be the best of its citizens to delegate its custodial powers. Oh, isn't that nice? The court is allowing you folks, all of you out there, to raise your own children as long as you're good little citizens and obey the law. It goes on. The law devolves the custody of infant children upon their parents, not so much upon the ground of natural right. For God's sake, there's none of that in this country. As because the interests of the children and the good of the public will, as a general rule, be therefore or thereby promoted. Yes, our lovely system, they actually believe that they own our children. And again, because we are goyim, because we've fallen for the registration of our children at birth, they claim legal standing to be the owner of your children because they're the owner of the name, the surname that you attached to your children at birth. So, Daniel, What's going on here? What happens? We're in the teen years now. We're in the baby years after the name's already been assigned. Where the parent has been the informer, and just crazy stuff. So now let's talk about a child. Let's talk about the fact that a child is basically the ward of the state, and the parents, are permissed by the government to raise them.
Well, lots to talk about. I think what we have to clearly understand again is there's the state child. I would call that more the state baby, infantry. These are the terms that seem to go on the legal side. They have to do with war. They have to do with civil means pagan. So we have to understand we're talking about civil contracts, civil obligations. Now, the parents would already be engaged or implied to be in that system by their participation. So if they're participants in there, they're in an implied social contract, which would require them to basically declare all issues. Anything that's born to the issue of the state name.
All right, well, let's pause there. We'll come back and discuss what the heck an issue is. Oh, no, another word we don't know.
Is this real, or is this rhyme? The world is like a ride. You think it's real, it's the rhyme. You can change it any turn you want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real, it's the rhyme. We can change it any turn you want. It's only a choice.
Okay, folks. Welcome back. Now, Daniel, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to steal your thunder here. Of course, you made me turn the pages, and you made me look up the word issue. I am starting to despise all of these words you're putting in my head because it's, Okay, so we're looking in 1828 again, Webster's dictionary. Issue. A sending out as the issue of an order from a commanding officer or from a court. The issue of money from a treasury. Number 3. Event, consequence, end or ultimate result. Our present condition will be best for us in the issue. Now listen to this, folks. Passage out or an outlet. What does that mean? Well, it references Psalms, it references Scripture. It says, to God the Lord belong the issues from death. Oh, that's not talking about necessarily the God in heaven. It's not talking about souls, because that can easily be transferred to the Lord God on earth, who belongs the person. So if you have a civil death or you have a insurance payout for death, that belongs to the Lord God. Number 5, progeny. Okay, an issue is progeny, a child or children, offspring, as he had issue or a son. And we speak of issue of the whole blood or half blood. A man dies without issue. Okay, going on.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's a mouthful. You see 2 words in the word issue, too. So you see is sue. Now, we know that when people have issues, they're always suing one another. People are always bringing about action. There's an action going on with that surname. There's a dispute over it, like a title fight. That's why we're always filling things in boxes, because we're always boxing. We're always fighting for the title that's not ours. I hope that makes sense.
Sure. In law, it says, in the same definition, in law, the close or result of pleadings, the point of matter depending in suit on which the parties join and put the case to trial by a jury. Just another way of saying what you just said.
And we keep on applying for things. We're saying, bring it on. I'm going to claim it's mine, even though I have no proof it's mine, but I want that title. I want that surname. I want that state name. I want that Roman family name, even though I can't prove how I would have it other than I've just been using it. So I always make the joke about applicant. It's really apply can't. You really can't apply, but you try. And that's why they try all. They'll even give you a free 30-day trial offer on your tickets that you get. They know they're going to win because it's their property. They just want to see you go in there and be dumb enough to fight.
Yeah.
So
well, and for anyone who's never been to a traffic court or have just gone and not really paid attention, I invite people to go sit in traffic courts because it's very important to understand that when the traffic court they love for you to show up to court, by the way. It's their favorite thing because then they can actually do incredible things. What they do, you'll notice, and you have every right to go sit in the audience. You don't have to, cross the bar. You just go sit. And you pay attention and you watch. And what you'll see is that the judge will say, well, this ticket is for $3,000, but I'm going to cut it down to $100, considering your situation that you've never committed a crime before. We're going to say $100. Bangs the gavel, and suddenly you're like, oh, wow, that judge just did me a favor. How nice of him. But what he really did was he wrote off $2,900. And they profit from that in a major, major, major way, because that $2,900 is actually still invested. It is the reason they like to give so much time, that 30 days, is because that money is created by that ticket. They put that in the investment fund, and they invest it. And then you come in, you dispute it, and then they say, well, okay, we're going to write it off. We still have the money in the investment fund because it's just a virtual currency. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything. Just a bunch of numbers in a computer. And then, of course, by the time the case is finally closed, you pay your $100. They've gained massive investment wealth from all of these written off things, and they just write off the rest. And they've managed to create an average daily balance using your $3,000 ticket, and eventually you pay $100. And I mean, the whole system, talk about usury, talk about the worst kind of racket. Yeah, just go watch, man. Every case, he'll bang his gavel and he'll give people a break. He'll be nice. And, with a firm hand, he'll allow you to pay less. Meanwhile, in the court registry investment system, they're investing all the money, kind of like they do with prisoners. It's the future wealth of that, or the sort of the invisible wealth that's being tacked there. So it's just such a horrible system. It's really, really.
I think what people fail to see is what truly is private property. Okay, well, remember, your proper name is your given name. That's the property. But in the world of fiction, they've created a property that we would think is an asset, but it's really debt. So when you do official public business for private dishonest gain, which is the definition of job, then you're pulling a job, you're robbing the public, but saying that you're working for the public name, the surname, but you're using it for your own private interest, and you pay for that. So no such thing of private property exists when you're a participant in the secular world of man, because you're technically not private. It's kind of like an oxymoron. You're mixing your private, inalienable name, Christian name, God-given name, with a alienable debtor name that's in the public, which means tax, because the publicans were tax collectors. Public can. Tax can. It's taxable. So, I even make a joke. A Republican is really re-tax can.
Republican is being born again.
In tax. So, we're into, I think, a confusion out there, because if the audience doesn't understand that they really don't have private property, the reason why the law can enter their property with a war rant is because they have a war surname in arms, and they can enter their property because it's already their property. It already belongs to somebody else. Therefore, they have the right to go in there to see what you're doing with that property that's not yours.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I've always had this theory, and I haven't really been able to put it into context that I can prove it. But I swear to that the Second Amendment does not just refer to guns or certain weapons, that the right to bear arms, because you look up the word arms, and the fact that it's capitalized in the Constitution means that it's a proper noun, and I get the feeling that that means something else than guns. It actually means coat of arms or something else, but I've never been able to really put that into something that I could actually, put forward like you do. But maybe we'll talk about that when we get back from the break. Stay tuned.
Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Well, maybe if I press this button. There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn, and so many people who can help us learn. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? In the garden of your mind. You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. In the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things.
All right, folks, welcome back.
About things and things.
So, naturally, over the break, I started thinking about this again. Like I said, the right to bear arms, there's something about that statement that has never really sat well with me. So here's what I found. I looked up 3 words over the break in my 1828 dictionary. Bear with me, Daniel. This is my speculation here. To bear means to be born, or to bear, to birth something, basically, to bear, or carry, bring, sustain, produce, bring forth. Well, that doesn't signify something that you own or already have. So the right to bear something, okay, well, what is an arm? Well, there's arms, of course, has many different meanings. Weapons of offense or armor for defense and protection of the body, but that is not what the legal term actually means. In law, there's 2 actually different versions. In law, arms are anything which a man takes in his hand in anger to strike or assault another. That doesn't say guns. Well, here's the interesting part, and this actually blew my mind. This blew my mind when I read it, because I've been trying to figure this out for so long. And again, this is my speculation. Not necessarily fact, just right out of the dictionary. An arm or arms are the ensign's armorial of a family consisting of figures and colors borne in shields, banners, and as marks of dignity and distinction. So, in other words, status, and descending from father to son. Okay. Well, that's interesting. It also says, where was that? I gotta find it, I'm sorry. An armorist. What is an armorist? Well, it would sound like someone who would be someone who creates armor or makes it, like a blacksmith, but no, that's not anywhere in here. Armorist is a noun, a name, and it is one who is skilled in heraldry. Wait a minute. So the third word I looked up, of course, was heraldry. I already know what it means, but for your benefit, the art or office of a herald. Heraldry is the art, practice, or science of recording genealogies and blazoning arms or ensigns, armorial. In other words, the family crest, basically. It also teaches whatever relates to the marshaling of cavalcades, processions, and other public ceremonies. So, Daniel, Am I way off in left field here to say that the Founding Fathers, the sneaky people that they were, who basically created a compact to take away all of your natural rights so that they could then bestow you with their privileges that they call rights, because, of course, they have to take away your natural rights in order to actually, or convince you that you need to give them up in order to accept the freedom and privileges of government. Is it very possible that the right to bear arms was put in the Constitution because the Constitution was, George Washington was cousin of the king that he was supposedly against, and Obama, again, is the first cousin of that same king, and each president since has been cousins with George Washington. Is it possible that arms, or the right to bear arms, was put in there to protect the progeny of the Constitution? In other words, to ensure that the right of that particular bloodline family to bear their arms, and we just, heraldry, basically. Am I off in left field here?
Just remember that constitute is to make up. It's like make believe. I'm going to make you believe something. I'm not going to let you do your own due diligence. I'm going to make you believe something, force you to believe. Armed forces working against you. Now, George, Founding Father, Washington, a good name there for a surname, describes him very well, washing a ton of lies. Because Founding Fathers, well, think about that. We probably use the capital F on that term, Founding Fathers. Scripturally, we wouldn't want to be doing that because we were not to call anybody our father except our Heavenly Father, speaking in the ultimate sense, the spiritual father. We know we have physical mother and father, but there's a spiritual sense also. But when we're talking about that particular scripture, call no one your father but your Heavenly Father, when we start relating to these people as being our founding fathers, I'm a little bit concerned with that thought in itself. Now,
well, let me say one thing. Now, when you go to etymology, this is something Tammy Pepperman sent me. She sent me the origin of the word Washington. Let me read this to you. U.S. Capitol, founded 1791, named for President George Washington, who lived till 1799. The family name from a town in northeastern England from Old English, literally meaning, quote, estate of a man named Wassa, W-A-S-S-A. The U.S. state was named when it was formed as a territory in 1853 or admitted to the Union. So literally, Washington, D.C. is an estate of a man named Wassa. In other words, George Washington wanted to be king. The fallacy is that he said, oh, no, I won't be king. But, in fact, Thomas Paine, I think it was, wrote about why there shouldn't be a king, which is why George Washington kept him in prison. So, I mean, the etymology of this word literally does make him, quote unquote, the father of the estate of a man. So it is kind of an interesting little issue. What were you going to say about arms?
Now, the Noah Webster's 1828, because I know a lot of the listeners have that version of the dictionary, at least the reproduction of the original 1828. Under unarmed, the definition says a man is born unarmed. So you have to realize that you're not born with an armorial bearing or name, surname, fictio, a man's person. You acquire that after birth. Just like after birth, it's just waste. So if we're born unarmed, well, then we'd only have our given name. Now, God's not in debt, our Creator. So if we're made in His image, we're debt-free, timeless, priceless, infinite. But in man's world, his person is a debtor, is basically a negative, something that's not not there in the manner that people think. So they have to get their head around what's going on there. The right to bear arms would be the right to take on debt. So if I want you to be a debtor, I'm definitely going to give you the right to bear arms. Remember, the control is controlling the debt, not the profit.
I knew it. I knew there had to be something to it. I just could never figure it out. Again, thank you for, people can believe what the heck they want, but I've been convinced of this for some time, that there was just something up with all of these terms. Hey, Daniel, Fred in Michigan is, I believe, the one who actually asked you this original question. Fred, welcome to the show, sir.
Dear guys. Very provocative, stimulating broadcast here as always. So we, the people, obviously identify that particular group of people, and there's two elements here that concerns me. Is this elitist group that always seem to be members of what I call the synagogue of Satan, and they're typically esquire attorneys. They seem to form their neat little private clubs and corporations for their own benefit, and as Deanna brought up with that one guest, Radel, I guess, the kosher laws, and I guess the American cheapo taxpayers are paying for that. So it really bothers me that we have, and even the woman from Georgetown University, Judith Shapiro, who authored The Sheetar's Effect on English Law, a law of the Jews becomes the law of the land. So we have this, in our own minds, superior, supreme race, and everyone else is goyim, basically just their property. And what you're describing is the mechanism by which they have
absolutely.
With that.
And remember, when we talked about what the law of the land means, when we talked about that with Bert, we looked up the words, and it kept referring to us other words. Eventually we found out law of the land simply means law of the corporation. It doesn't mean the dirt or the water or the physical earth. It means the corporation, the paper, the title that they claim. Law of the land does not mean what we think it does. So, I hear music. Fred will. I know you had other questions that you'd asked a couple of weeks ago, so we'll straight away we'll ask those and see if we've answered them. Stay tuned, folks.
Derivatives, quantitative easing, trade imbalances, recession, low GDP, nations close to collapsing, and subprime loans, foreclosed homes, and people's taxes spent to bail out too big to fail AAA banks again. Fear levels rising as the U.S. crash seems imminent.
We have our original caller on the line. We keep talking about answering Fred's original questions. Now, we're only going to take one here. Which originally was basically why the Bible promotes usury. Have we answered that, or do you think we need to discuss that a little more?
Hey, Fred, is it possible I could address your Romans 13 question first, and then if you call back, maybe in the future we can deal with the one on the usury?
Yeah, in fact, let me just say this. I agree to that, of course, but also it is a fact that we need to empower the audience regarding the use of their birth certificate as a security asset against which all the Federal Reserve notes are created and issued. So there's supposed to be a Treasury direct account, a special account, bearing our name with it like an unlimited value. Maybe you guys can address that. There's got to be some kind of a secretive process by which we can tap into that, okay?
I've never actually been able to prove that, so it's not something I promote, but a lot of people say that.
Okay. I'm going to be really quick on that part. I don't want to go too far because we'll get off the Romans 13, but just consider the birth certificate's like a bankruptcy certificate. It's a BC. It's a before Christ. Man is bankrupt in sin. Okay? He's bankrupt. He can't pay his charges. There's no date confirming AD on those short form birth certificates, those little wallet size, ambiguous certificates. Most of them just say certified extract, not certified true extract. And there is a difference. So, to the best of my knowledge, when you look up, they're called a token of value. It's been spoken of by the Deputy Registrar General in Ontario, claiming it's a valuable token, a token of value. When I looked it up in the law books, the only thing I could find was counterfeit token of value. Now, if it is not your real name, I guess it would be a counterfeit. And because it doesn't say given name and surname on the extracts or the small wallet size certificates, they're not clear. So
I want to say,
don't get too I would say warm and friendly with the idea of the BC.
Yeah, and I would say this too, man. I fell for that whole UCC process and everything because, everybody wants to go the route that sounds easiest. Oh, you mean I can get money? Like that commercial that just played. I can get money off of my debt. I can participate in the fraud and actually get money from the fraud. That's great. Basically, what we're presenting, and I think Daniel will agree here, is not the easy road. It is not something that you will be able to use in fraud to gain from the fraud. That's all we're telling you. Do not accept the birth certificate. Do not ever say that the birth certificate is you. So in order to do that process, you're going to have to respect status and personhood. That is a much easier route, believe it or not, than not respecting, than saying, no, I will not participate and I will not go against the teachings that we're talking about for the net to be free. I don't want a bunch of money if it means I'm not free. And that's the point. I think the real hard thing for people to grasp here is because we always want to think, how are we going to profit from our situation? I've been harmed. I want money for it. No, you've been harmed. Therefore, you should get the heck away from this thing. Get out of hell.
I tried to get my original birth certificate about 20 years ago, and they sent me back an unsigned letter, the state of Michigan senator, and he said, unless I had a very special research interest, I couldn't even see it. So I see it as a fraudulent conversion of my private name in counterfeit commercial use. And it's all fraud. Even the bankruptcy was artificially induced and declared. It's all, so they're in receivership. They don't have status other than that of a bankrupt entity. So what valid legal authority? It's all bluff. It's all lies. It's all deceit. It's
all lies and deceit unless you accept it. That's the difference.
The James 5:5 scripture clearly says that the wealthy steal from the hired hand, have stolen from the hired hand, and these people that are working thinking that they're getting something of value basically are held back, it says, by fraud. I mean, if people read the scripture, they're going to see there's some clear indications what we're not supposed to be involved in if we want to be in truth. So, again, we have to really do our research, our due diligence. And if I can only make a quick comment on Romans 13, it said be subject to the higher powers. It didn't say be a subject. And if I'm subjecting myself to the higher powers, what happens if I'm using something that doesn't belong to me and I'm actually working as an enemy against the state based on the fact that the governments are in bankruptcy protection? Maybe I'm working for a third party who lends the money into the government. And so therefore, if I'm using something that I'm not supposed to be using, but I say I'll use it, they'll even issue me a counterfeit. because it's their own certificate from the third party. Because it's not really who I am. It's me identifying myself as an imposter, someone who gets the impost, the tax, for imposturing an identity that's not mine.
Right. All right, Fred, thanks for the call. I'm going to try to get one more call. We actually have another Fred from Iowa who's been holding for a while. Fred, welcome to the show.
Hi, Clint. And you're going to have Daniel on for a while, because, boy, this is mind-boggling and a lot to take in.
I'll tell you.
I'm a keeper, okay? I choose to tithe to RBN. I'm new to RBN. I choose to tithe to it. That doesn't mean that I'm putting my trust in the arm of man. I am very much against wars. But I have the major conflict, and possibly, Clint, you have it too. I don't want to harm anybody. I'm against war. But how do you protect yourself? Now, it says to take on the armament of God, and the only offensive weapon is the sword of the Spirit. Okay, I'm going to ask Daniel about one verse, and you can take one verse out of the Bible and make anything you want of it.
Do it quick.
I'll do my best to give you the right answer.
Okay. Now, the sword of the Spirit, and Clint was saying, say it for me, heraldry, and an ensign, a sign, a flag. You have the Spirit, you have this Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, and that's your protection and directs you and how you try to help and inform others. Okay, Clint, after I ask this question, I'm going to get off the air. Could you explain your interpretation of Luke 22, verse 36? Thank you, guys.
Do you want me to touch this?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the verse.
Okay, if he's talking about, when it was talking about the spiritual armor that Christ was talking about, he's not talking in a physical armor. And we have to go back to heraldry quickly. The only spot in the Bible where heraldry comes up is in the book of Daniel, when Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, who had the Israelites in bondage in 586 BCE, were telling them all to bow down, all the people, all the commoners, all his subjects, to bow down to a man-made idol he made. And so therefore the herald called out for everybody to do this act of obeisance to this idol. And that's when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the three Hebrews, refused to do so. So we have to understand that word heraldry, but in the spiritual sense, our spiritual armor is our Christian name or our God-given name.
It's a deflective tool for all of that we're talking about. Oh, I hear very loud music, which means we're at the end of the show. Thank you, Daniel. We'll see you next week, my friend. This has been mind-blowing for me and hopefully is equally for the audience. I sure do appreciate you. Christian Remedy in Law on YouTube. See you next time. Tomorrow we'll have Bert. Take care.
Take care.